does, which I find amazing because one of the reasons why my Alone in the Dark video a while ago has such fucked up audio is I didn't realize that I had done like 45 minutes of recording with the fan on, or I realized I knew I had, but I just didn't realize it was picking it up. And the more I listened to it, the more I could hear it. And so I compressed the hell out of it or something to try and get it away. And then it just made the vocal quality just keep lower and lower. I was like, damn it.
I know.
I'm too deep. Can't back out now.
Yeah. And that's the one that got snatched up by the algorithm as well.
I'm telling you, I don't know how. And it's not. I don't think you can hear the whir anymore. I think you just have to hear me kind of like mumbling into the mic, trying not to blow it out, and then trying to sing demur and or demure, however you say it. And I had one or two rather salty, like, bro, you sound like you're trying to like not wake someone up in the next room. You could do better than this. I'm like, fair enough.
I know of some YouTubers that I've been watching over the years, and they have gotten like more consistently soulless monotone, and I just can't. They do like long form stuff for like 90 minutes, 2 hours, and the entire presentation will be delivered with a voice like this.
You see what I'm doing here? Over the past year, whenever I talk to someone who had played Signalis, it's like,
I have had a very hard time in college, but The Legend of Zelda always kept me on my feet.
So without further ado, let's jump into it.
Shout out to my cat.
Right.
Yeah.
My quirky cat, Mr. Picklesby.
My quirky cat. I used like that word in... We had Jackbox game night yesterday, and I used the word quirky. It was like, what was it? You got a prompt like, come up with the best nickname for the worst person on the sports team. And I had a quirky polio bitch. That one got a lot of votes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that was
poor QPB.
QPB. Yeah. Anyway, so I wrote up a small flow list for the podcast. I used to do podcasts back in the day.
Yeah.
So I thought, it's better if we keep it structured. So
most definitely. I have definitely been on a podcast or two before where you can tell people are trying to be loose and keep it, kind of get people to relax. But the relaxation never stops, and it just leans on in, and you can't corral it because you've opened it up to where it's like, it feels really awkward. Like, okay, shut up. We're not talking about that anymore.
No. I've always had compliments that I'm a good host because I'll just say, that's nice, but we have more questions. There's stuff like that, and I used to work in hospitality where you just have to tell people to shut up very creatively. It's very
right.
It's helpful.
Like it's just something has to be done. It's not me talking.
I'm sorry your grandfather died, but I have to keep working.
This still costs money. You still have to pay it. There's no grievance fund, unfortunately.
I know you really want this Gromit mug, but I can't give it to you.
Not for the low price of $3.99.
$3.99 with a bit of Wensleydales. Well, so how do you want to go about this? I take it you do the recording, you do the editing. Anything I can do?
To be honest with you, if you wanted to, I know me and the artist formerly known as Mr. Skotsky. I guess he's now. You ever seen Skotsky in my Discord? He just did a rebrand, so his name is probably something like, I think it's like Primordial Chronicles now or something. Yeah.
I think I've seen him fly by.
He's been in there from time to time. But anyway, he I forget why I brought that up now.
Yeah, I've seen him around. Thanks.
Yeah,
maybe
oh, sorry. The reason I brought that up is when we were capturing our co-op footage together in a couple instances. We would both record just in case something happened with, the other person's stream. So if you wanted to do that, just to kind of have coverage, because I know like one time the frame rate totally tanked on my recording, but we had all the visual. I actually ended up using his visuals in my recording in my Alone in the Dark thing, for instance. So that can always be good. Of course, in this instance, it's just probably audio, and then if we want to put something cool over top of it, we can. But
yeah, I can OBS it.
Yeah, I'll do the same.
Because I don't have I don't have audio recording software, but I do have streaming software. If that's not a problem.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll just record the Discord.
Preserve the time we spend here, kind of thing, just in case something goes crazy. Or we
and reenacting it isn't the same.
Right. Remember that time you were so surprised? Oh yeah. What?
Oh yeah. Can't tell me more.
That's so insightful. I should definitely stop and let you talk about that for a predetermined amount of time.
Oh, you forgot to mention that thing. I mean, what about this?
You forgot your line. You skipped over it. I mean, we've never had this conversation before.
Okay, yeah, it's capturing both. I'm just gonna capture a black screen. Just the audio. Can you actually just capture audio with OBS?
I keep thinking you can, and then when I put it on, it's like it always captures a video file regardless, even if it's just black screen.
Yeah.
So, and people, I have trouble sending people audio files on Discord, for instance, because it's this giant blank video file, technically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, your list is good. And you sound like
anything you want to add, anything you want to change.
No, you're good. I think you've covered it all, really.
Okay.
Let me just reread it real quick. But I think you've got a pretty good sequence here. Game design, inventory, movement, combat, boss fights, pace. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was going to hit on.
Right.
Just the kind of the feel of everything is like a good way to put it. How design, how does it all come together versus just trying to compartmentalize every little thing by itself.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a really important part of this particular game.
Yeah.
And whether you enjoy it or not.
And I have kept myself from watching like YouTuber videos about like, Signalis explained. So everything that I will bring to the table will be entirely my own interpretation.
That's probably going to be a really good contrast because I have watched everything I could find.
Yeah, I was way too busy watching a 9-hour Morrowind retrospective, man.
That sounds like a way better use of your time. Yeah.
It was wonderful. There's this guy, Patrician, on YouTube. He makes incredibly long videos, but they're so well put together.
Yeah, Mr. He has recap the whole game.
Yeah, it's not, because that's what I hate. Like, there's like a guy called Totally Pointless, and he makes like he's like the worst horror game you've never known, and he never puts like the name of the game in the video title, and he makes like clickbaity thumbnails, and then it's like, yeah, so anyway, we wake up in this asylum, and it goes all the way to like, we defeated God and gave birth to his child. That's the end of the game. What did you guys think? Isn't it? Don't just summarize the entire game. Review it. You're a reviewer.
Yeah, like I've had,
not a summary writer.
Yeah, I've always kind of struggled with like not wanting to do that, because at first I was like, why would I ever want to just go? Like, why would I want to basically make you go through the game but worse? And now
but that's what these guys do, and they have so many followers.
Yeah, well, did you know his backstory? He only started making gaming videos in like the last year. He used to do like really funny karate, kung fu type videos. That's what he's been known for. In fact, my dad, first of all people who does not game at all, he'll watch the occasional game if he likes the vibe or if it reminds him of a movie he liked or something. But he literally found this guy sent me a couple of videos of like Steven Seagal. Washed up Steven Seagal doing crazy shit, and then all of a sudden I was realizing, it's like, this guy should have made like a lot of Dark Souls references, and there's like maybe a Zelda reference here and there. I was like, he must really like games. And all of a sudden he's like, you know what, guys, I think I'm just going to do video game reviews for the rest of my life. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And there's this other guy, summoning salt. No, Salt Factory.
Yeah.
And he swings between both. He has either really good reviews with plenty of offshoots and like company history, production history, or he'll just read out the whole game to you.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's weird to have that contrast because I know he can do it, but sometimes he just
what he's into.
Doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm
let's get started.
Let's do it.
Let's get started. I'll start the recording.
All right.
Will you too?
Yeah, I'm already recording, so we're good.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna start it now. All right. Hi.
Howdy.
Hi, my name is GV-97. And who are you?
Why, kind sir, I'm glad you asked. I'm high-functioning medium of the YouTubes.
YouTubes?
YouTubes, and now it's a WeTube because we're here together.
That's true. Plural.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're here today to talk about Signalis, a game that has kept us both way too busy without being all too long.
You know, it's it knows how to stretch out your brain and just keep you engaged, for better or worse.
Yeah. We'll get into that. But yeah, let's start with a basic rundown of things, general thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you the word because you wanted this, so take the reins and guide us.
All right, so just basic upfront thoughts, and then we'll kind of break them down.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, when I first played Signalis, I can't say I was in love with it. I liked a lot of the things it was doing. I got pretty worn out by like the 2/3 mark. Just the balancing, the inventory size. It wasn't really difficulty per se. It was just sort of like some of the puzzles were a little bit obtuse. Some of them, to my knowledge, kind of could break and not let you forward, and you have to reload and things like that. Some signposting things I thought were pretty janky and sort of like inhospitable to the player in ways that just didn't seem necessary. So I was thinking by the end, like I've got a recording. I keep wondering if I should be really salty and petty and like put it in the video where I'm like, after like the 10th time with the final boss, you see me just close out, go to the home screen, and go to the uninstall all, and just hover on there like, should I do this? I'm going to be mad and want to reinstall it immediately to beat it. I was like, that was kind of my initial experience with it, where I was impressed by a lot of the disparate parts of it, but the experience to me just dragged a lot. And then I kind of got it into my head that it was like, well, Signalis is like something that everybody appreciates and respects, and I can usually lay aside my prejudice for something to kind of give it a fair shot and like, engage with it, make something about it. And it's usually how I kind of have a therapy session with games I don't like very much. Scorn is like that. Ultimate World 2 was kind of like that, where it was like, let's try and make something of this that's constructive. And that's what Signalis became. And then it became like a challenge to try and figure it out, which is, a daunting, if possibly foolhardy task, as it proved.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been doing, is working on this big, long thing that's just about done with for the better half of this year. But it took that long to kind of get to a point where I felt like I was accounting for enough things or just missing things that I didn't think mattered enough to keep getting hung up on, to be like, I think I figured something out that's worth, worth expressing. And that was kind of my how I reconciled with the game that way. But yeah. A lot of strengths, a lot of low lows. There are some pretty incredible artistic things that go on in this game, and to be honest, it still probably plays better than like 90% of survival horror games that came before it. So, if nothing else, you can, like, as much as I'm down on it, I can't sit there and like pick apart every little thing and not be appreciative of the things they did improve that the genre struggled with in the past.
Yeah, I think like if you, from a completely unbiased view, someone knows nothing about this game and you present them with the movement, I think that is genuinely a standout thing. which is very silly, but
No,
it just feels good to
I think
move
it's appreciated.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really smooth.
yeah, it does. I've never felt that comfortable in tight corridors.
Right. That little like kind of that like get low little shimmy she does.
Yeah,
Where you're kind of like,
yeah,
man, she's just fast enough. But my God, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And then you clip through, and you hit that door and you go through, and it's like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
we did it. Yeah, I think it's really well balanced. I think she used to move
yeah.
faster, if I'm not mistaken. I think I remember reading that she
Mm.
moved a little bit too fast, and so that's the like the heavily tuned version of her movement speed. I think it's probably
Yeah,
just right. Doesn't look bad, feels pretty great, which is
yeah,
important because like most games to me like either make it so fast travel intensive you don't feel like you're ever in a game or at a
yeah.
place, and then a lot of the other games I feel like really struggle to make just the simple act of moving around fun, which is really important because that's probably what you're going to be doing the most of in big games.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for me, you know how it went. I got really into it. We started talking about it, and then I hit a certain part of the game that we'll get into later because
Yeah.
I nearly everyone that I've spoken to is not the biggest fan of it. So maybe there's something to learn there, but I dropped it for a while and then I picked it up again because well you expressed interest in covering it as well. So I made my way to the end and I think it's a good game, but I also wholeheartedly believe that it is overrated, despite being really good and like impressive to be made by two people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my thoughts. It's very immersive. It's thought provoking, good or bad, and just yeah, it's a joy to play up to a certain point.
Yeah. In fact, I think what's probably a really good strength of the game is the first, I wouldn't say the first third, but it's like the first major kind of area that you're in,
Yeah,
all that interconnected area. I thought that was really good.
yeah,
And it plays really well, I think, because it mimics Resident Evil the most,
yeah.
whereas the rest of it
I think
gets silent heavy.
the hospital's really good. The med wing and the I don't know what it's called, but the area with the stairs outside that you can unlock and go up and down on.
Yeah, the kind of classic. What is it like?
Yeah,
6 to 7 floors, maybe.
yeah,
Up and
yeah,
down.
yeah,
That don't. That was the
yeah,
confusing part. They always seem to go in like the opposite order. It seems like you'd go down and then somehow you'd like go up in number or something. I was like, wait, what?
yeah,
I was confused by that, but yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. You may have been talking
yeah,
about that Pater Noster elevator too. I guess those are
yeah, yeah,
technically parallel to each other, so they're going up and down the same area.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed that part. That was definitely like my favorite part, gameplay wise. Just because it effectively put everything together that you learned that came before it, and
Mm-hmm.
then pulled the rug out of you, and it said, "Okay, have fun," and it did that really well. Um, but let's go to the next thing on our list. I'd say, unless you have more things you'd wish to bring to the table before heading into the defined topics.
Yeah, I noticed. Let's see, you've got the game design, like inventory, movement, combat, boss fights, and
Yes.
pacing. Were you thinking about going to something different in that list, or going straight to the visuals?
No, I'd say let's discuss
Keep it on game design.
game design.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Just making sure.
let's keep
Making sure I
game
wasn't
design now.
keeping it one step back, and you're like, no, 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 we've moved on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
Probably talk about
a
the inventory. Yeah.
very yeah, the inventory has been a touchy one for a lot of people. So much so that in the latest update, they've even added a menu option to start the game with a larger inventory. To me, I think the main issue that it had is what Resident Evil solved tens of years ago was quest items in inventory. The fact, especially around the time that you get in that chapter that I struggled with. You just have to lug around so many quest items in your 6-slot inventory, while they also up the number of combat, that it just felt a little frustrating more than challenging.
Yeah, and I feel like that's often been the problem of like a lot of survival horror games in general, and just some modern game design where they think that they can just sort of like aggress upon the player, and that's automatically tense or interesting. That like ardor and like constantly need to be under the gun is just it's like they're forcing the issue and expecting you to just go, oh my god, I love it. And it's like a Stockholm syndrome where you're like, I mean, I guess I have to love it because it's a survival horror game. I can't really like be okay with where I am. In fact, here's a quote or quotation from Yuri Stern. They were talking about that inventory limit. Like at first it was really big and everybody's picked everything up and, had no thought process about what to keep or what to leave behind. And they were like, oh, I don't like that. So they changed it. And to what we now know is that like that 6-item limit. And I'll see if I can find the quotation here because it's kind of interesting. Because I can't remember if I kept it in my own video about it.
Right.
But I think I did because I think I criticized it pretty specifically. Although I may have gone down on my criticism of it where it didn't seem so pointed and so whiny. But it's basically like, survival. This is the way survival horror is, and anything less is sort of. It's almost like they thought they were like getting away with something. Which I thought was an interesting bit because it really is the devil's in the details on something like that, where it really does have to be tuned, experientially. You can't sit there and go, this will automatically be good or bad, or 3 enemies to 6 slots. They'll have just enough to get harassed but not feel too overwhelmed. And it's like you have to put those paces, and I feel like it didn't quite hit that zenith. Like it was too easy to just avoid combat. You weren't, and I guess what I ran into was there was so much stuff unrelated to stuff you didn't have yet, like ammo for guns you didn't have. It was never like the stuff lying around matched what you would have carried with you. And so there's all this like Goldilocks, like hope you got the right thing with you.
I started, especially in that one area, nowhere they call it. You just walk around, you'd wander around, and it's like, oh, here, grenade launcher ammo and big revolver ammo. I don't even have those, and they're lying everywhere.
Yeah, the revolver was probably the saddest one for me. I was always like, bro, I can't carry this gun with me, right? I've got a pistol.
Yeah. And the pistol, for what it's worth, is really good. Yeah, it's really nice little starter weapon.
For sure.
But yeah, inventory, I didn't mind it until arriving in Nowhere, because Nowhere expects you to carry around so many quest items.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of a slog in general.
Yeah, especially with the map.
Yeah, but until then, I did not have many issues with the limited inventory, personally.
Yeah, I think I think the first third of the game is pretty well put together in that regard. Like you kind of know, like it feels like you're playing the type of game you've been playing with sort of a recent Resident Evil game or something like those RE2 remakes. They're pretty well balanced and they keep a pretty reasonable amount of stuff lying around. You kind of get, like you kind of see the developers, kind of crouching behind the corner going, you know what I want you to do, right? I'm giving you an option. It feels a lot more kind of self-aware about its design. And where sometimes you'll be running around Signalis and you'll just be like, bro, why are there so many nitro flash cells or whatever those things are called?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't bring that with me. And it's just the most bizarre, like, mismatching of stuff. And you're like, well, I guess I need to pick that up just in case. And then the next room will require you to have a completely different loadout than what they've been prepping you for. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what in the world?
Yeah, a big issue was also, like, until you arrive in Nowhere, combat is pretty tame. You'd have like a max of 3 storks in a single room, and if you really wanted to go into that room, you could unload. But once you arrive in Nowhere, there's enemies everywhere, everywhere. Every single room, even like the central loop room, has like 7 enemies. One of them is a boss turned normal enemy, and I'm like, oh, what the hell? Yeah, the one with the bed in the middle. It's like, oh,
Fortunately, you don't have to go through that room too many times. But man, when you do, you're just like, oh god,
yeah.
I'm very likely not going to do well here.
It just feels so conflicting after everything else was so. Yeah, well, it felt like they dropped the ball there to me, and yeah, well, many of the people that I've spoken to.
Yeah, I think another thing we probably want to touch on too is like the lack of a map makes theoretical sense. It seems like a good idea, but the problem then needs to be that it needs to be easy to map them mentally. If you're going to leave out the map, or not that it needs to be easy, but it needs to be achievable. Then everything looks the same. You've got door after door after door that requires a different code, but they all look the same, and so there's nothing about their physicality from the the third person view that gives you an indication of, oh, that's the one that goes to this. You have to click on it and then see what symbol it has on it to know which one you need to get out of the little
3 zombies are breathing down your neck.
And to be honest, a lot of those doors are in non-combat zones. It's just that, like, how would you keep up? There's like, what, 6 or 7 of them probably?
Yeah, they did with the with the little sound wave puzzle symbol stuff.
Yeah, which is clever conceptually, but it is sort of a nightmare to keep track of. And I had trouble enough in the first third of the game just remembering like what I would want to do next, because there's not any log. There's not an objective mark. Not there has to be, but there's nothing kind of intuitively pushing you to go to this thing other than like what doors are still yellow, still like need to be gone towards in the map.
Yeah, they have taken notes from Silent Hill and Resident Evil on marking where you've been.
Yeah, and generally speaking, that part's good, but
I don't know. I don't quite remember if they also marked if a room was looted or not. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
But I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Mark which rooms are dark, like that need a flashlight, like they're grayed out or something, or really dim. But I don't know that they do anything other than just tell you that the door has been breached. So it'll be like a blue door or something, and like grayed out if it can't be accessed. Red, red if it was broken or something, and then yellow if it has a key that needs to be used.
Yeah. So yeah, inventory. Movement. We talked about the movement. It's really good. Yes. You're allowed to dodge and weave. You're not too limber. You're not too slow. Your hitbox is pretty generous.
Mm-hmm.
So then next in line we have combat. I like the combat. It's pretty good. I would have liked a melee weapon, personally.
Yeah, they do kind of compromise that a little bit, where they give you that shove when you get in close.
Yeah, the stun one, the stun stick.
That's generally pretty good, actually. Because I tend to sandbag my items like way too hard. just keep them until the very last moment.
Oh, yeah, potions for the final boss. Yeah, small health potions.
Like, I don't want to be caught. With my pants down. So let me.
Yeah.
And then I realized the second or third time I went through it, I was like, I should just be unloading these stun batons.
Because there's so many of them.
Yeah,
you get absolutely showered with them.
That was the road to victory right there.
Yeah, that's also I think the ammo economy in the game is a bit too much. At least in the earlier chapters, there's like enough bullets lying around to kill every monster in every room 3 times over.
Yeah, and there may be too many guns, to be honest with you. I think that may be part of the problem.
I think how many are there? Like 6?
Yeah, we've got
6
the
or
pistol,
7?
Revolver, shotgun, flare gun, machine gun. I don't know if there's another one. It's only 5?
Yeah, the grenade launcher.
Grenade launcher. I think there's grenade shells that go to the flare gun.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, that goes in the flare. Yeah.
You know, flare grenades.
Yeah, like Alan Wake.
Yeah.
I was clapping when I got the flare gun in Alan Wake 2. That thing rocks.
That's another thing too. No one really seems to recognize how many similarities those two games have. I see zero talking about it online. You can't keyword search it, and I've looked at probably 100 Reddit posts about.
Well, it's
both
if you strip
recently.
them both down, if you both strip them naked, or tell them the same story.
They've got some pretty cool similarities. We'll have to jump into that here in a little bit. We'll save that nugget. We'll leave them. That'll be the Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
For the later portions here.
Okay.
The Chekhov's flare gun.
So we got boss fights. I am never a huge fan of forced combat in survival horror games. Especially the final boss is a bit crazy.
That kind of ruined my life a little bit.
Yeah, I cleared it in one go. No, two. But I didn't enjoy it, and I think that's the most important part.
Begrudgingly great at it. Yeah, they said probably 10 failures, and I just was like, yeah, I'm gonna sit this one out for a while, and came back a month or two later and got it like the next go, and I was like, that's the way it always goes.
Yeah, I just don't really understand why they did it like that, because it is such a long and aggressive boss encounter. Yeah,
with fairly imprecise damage. Feedback. I noticed, and hear me, correct me if I'm wrong. I'll tell you what I ran into, and what I'll be talking about some of my video. And I felt like, despite the flare gun being kind of like the equalizer in the main game, pretty much messes anybody up. Pretty fun, lots of good feedback. For some reason, it didn't seem to do a whole lot to Falk. I felt like I just used, because I bloated up thinking, this is the rocket launcher, the Resident Evil rocket launcher. Let's load it up. What could possibly do more damage? And even when I was hitting her, she'd kind of get burnt out by a little bit, but it was like it eventually just would hit her and then do nothing. And I couldn't tell if it was maybe it was getting close to her and then it was kind of veering off at the end and not really hitting her or something. But it just totally lost effectiveness. I basically could not beat that boss with what seemed like the most OP inventory. I had to start using the machine gun, because the pistol, you basically had to never miss, have your inventory entirely made up of bullets to get the full health down. And you know how hard it is to get that thing to because that sight is so finicky at range. It's just got the little rotating shields and everything. I was just like, this just requires too much precision over too long of a time.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. It's an odd final boss. Because you don't get that like Resident Evil catharsis where you get to beat up the biggest bad guy with the biggest gun at the end. And I don't think that fits this game, but it would be a preferable alternative to whatever this Dark Souls idea was.
I like the idea of it. Like on paper, I can see.
I like the concept too.
It escalates pretty well. It is a nightmare to perform a lot of the time, in my opinion. Like there's just so much input from the game, like so much just distortion across the screen.
But there's
so
also
little room to maneuver.
Yeah, but to me, the problem is with encounters like these is it's the only one like this. It's not an evolution of a previous encounter. It's just, here's the hardest combat encounter in the game. It does so many things that none of the other things in the game do.
It reminds me
so
of
you're basically... Yeah.
That's probably the closest analog, because you've got this dude basically chucking really heavy range stuff at you that you're going to have to sit there and really, shuck and jive to get around while being... hounded by these little weird-looking Silent Hill monsters.
Yeah.
about the closest.
I still think it's
that really awkward precision thing, because you kind of like when that minor boss drops, you have to get like right in front of it. Sometimes you knock it down right in front of something you can't get in front of, so you waste the whole thing. And kind of
I think that
shields go in the final boss fight.
I think that first boss was good. It was it shook me a little bit, because you drop down and it's like, oh, here's a person with a massive laser gun.
Good luck. Good luck fighting the big sister.
Good luck. But there was a lot of cover. There were enemies that dropped resources. It was pretty self-explanatory. I enjoyed that one. But yeah, the final boss was a bit much. I wouldn't call it bad, but it's a bit of a strong departure for everything that came before it.
Yeah, my issue with it was just sort of the balance of it all. Again, we have have the same issues that have cropped up. We have this inability to pick up items efficiently a lot of the time. Like you have to get like square your hips to things. You click. The game doesn't pause at all as you're clicking through these completely unnecessary menu. I mean, why would I be clicking on it if I didn't want to pick it up? You know, so I'm sitting there clicking through. Yes, I want to pick it up.
Do you want to pick up the 10 pistol ammo?
If it took and let you actually click on what you wanted to click on, then half the time you're getting irrelevant ammo. Like there's not the end game or the end boss fight has one of the craziest ammo drops. It has like a couple shotgun shells, a little bit of revolver ammo, a decent number of like grenade flares and stuff like that, which makes sense, except for the fact they're fucking useless against the boss and only for the mobs, the trash mob that's running around. But I noticed that like as I kind of went through and tried some different loadouts, there was not a single avenue that you could lean into and prepare for that would get you enough damage output to make it like you had to carry too many guns to account for the different types of ammo that dropped. And none of the ammo that dropped was really supplementing what you brought anyway. It was just maybe like it just to cover a miss or two kind of thing, or like a couple of misses. And I was just like, who is this for? Like, this doesn't boost me up in anything. It's like distracting because I'm sitting there going like, please God, just anything. I'm scrounging around the ground for stuff, and it's not enough for any loadout. That matters, that actually defeats the boss. And like I say, I feel like there was kind of this weird balancing thing where it's like they made Falk resistant, or something was going on with the flare gun that it was just not harassing her nearly enough or damaging her nearly enough to where I just had to be like, well, these bullets seem to be doing the job. I just need more bullets faster. So enter the machine gun. Because the shotgun doesn't carry nearly enough ammo. There's like a couple shotgun shells that drops. You're like, okay, that's right out. Those flare guns just to handle the mobs, and you're like, damn, this is really whittling down my options.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not a huge fan of everything concerning the ending, but we'll get to that.
Sure,
we'll get to that. Pacing wise, well, I think we've covered that. The issues that it has with pacing and escalation pretty broadly in the other topics that we've discussed. So I'd say we might want to gloss over that one.
Yeah, I guess to put a bow on it, I think the first part of the game is pretty solid because it feels like a really good Resident Evil, where it feels like a realistic space that you're interacting with and kind of naturally progressing. I feel like you're figuring out how the facility works. And I think as it gets a little bit more abstract and starts to lean in, go from Resident Evil to Silent Hill, it's cool, but it doesn't play nearly as well. And like it's a much more contrived space, which isn't inherently wrong because you are playing a game. Like you don't really need to be too touchy about that, but it's like it kind of makes you aware of its artifice a little bit too much, and then it's so distracting.
Yeah, it's distracting.
It's so distracting in the way that it not only is not as immersive to be in, even though it looks kind of cool, but your lack of a map and the confusion of all the landmarks, which is the trade-off you want, or not a trade-off at all. It's just the worst of both worlds. It's like and it's just like, what a slog to get through. And then you get to the final third in Rotfront. That's a pretty solid area aside from the inventory issues with the tarot cards.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of back where you started, but that's at least a nice kind of synthesis between the first two areas. It definitely starts to pick on the player again with like where it starts blocking off all the routes that you used to go down once you've memorized them. It starts putting flesh over doors and making you take that like.
No, I do like that though.
Yeah, I was like, oh
because the difficulty was very forgiving. It was a bit of a victory lap.
Yeah, I don't know. It sort of felt like padding or something, or just sort of jabbing.
Nowhere felt like padding.
Where?
No. Nowhere.
Nah.
Nowhere felt like padding to me.
No, I'm just being silly.
Oh, silly?
Where? Nowhere?
Nowhere? Where? Nowhere. Where?
Which is which?
Which one? The one without the map. But yeah, if they could have kept the flow they were going for in the first third of that game, it would have been, to me, a lot more solid.
Mm-hmm. And I do appreciate that they've done a pretty good job of accommodating both play styles or both series feels.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, there was something a little bit just off about just kind of the execution to me about that middle portion, where it just feels like, because like Rot Front is a much better, where it kind of feels like you start to kind of feel the contrast between the logical structure of a kind of a robotic facility, if you will, or digital this and that, and feels like the untamed wild is overtaking, and that's got really cool contrast. But the middle part's just like really cool looking, but yeah, definitely a little bit of a chore to get through, and all the issues that kind of pop up here and there just get manifested big time in the final boss fight, where you're like, how appropriate.
And the funny thing, if they wanted to, because they're very strongly like emulating Silent Hill in the nowhere portion, should have just have Elster draw her own map. Not just no map, just like in the Silent Hill way, where every time you enter, you draw a room, you mark off with like with a pencil, like, no, this one's locked. That would have solved a lot of problems.
Or if they really wanted to just sort of split the difference, maybe even do what they did with those were the Thief maps like this? I feel like Thief 2 did something where they just kind of give you a really generic map, like a printout, not like a mental map, like some maps let you kind of cheat and do things you'd never be able to do in real life. To tell you which one you're in and this kind of shit. But maybe that would have been a good compromise or something. Again, I think it's just the problem with the landmarks, but yeah. Well, you mentioned we've been talking about kind of leaning into, I think, our next topic anyway, the Silent Hill, Resident Evil, et cetera, the 300 inspirations that this game plays with, basically by name.
The inspirations, I would personally compare it, like, if I had to pick two games from the era that it's inspired by, I'd say it has a very strong Resident Evil 3 feeling, original, and Silent Hill 1. That's the feeling I got from it. Because it's not quite like the locations are not quite as dense and layered as like Resident Evil 2. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a more linear, straightforward progression to it all, with little to no side ventures. And the Silent Hill is the combat reminds me of it. The enemies remind me of it, and then eventually the visual style and the heavy emphasis on mental
psychological horror.
Yes.
Distress.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool kind of a piecemealing of like their favorite media, which I thought was a pretty fun, and it's done pretty well. I mean, it's not a game like there's some like Nowhere is pretty on the nose, but there's a decent kind of synthesis of all the different things that they like without it feeling like just sort of Frankensteining everything together, even as it literally calls it by its name, which I think is good.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a cheap copy. It felt like a homage, but without being like a photocopy.
Mm-hmm.
especially the road front things, because once again, nowhere is it lays it on a little too thick.
Yeah, I've heard a couple people that are a little bit more enamored with Silent Hill, the originals, that are like, I can't believe they did this. It's like, I mean, is it a crime?
I love those games. But like at some point, when you're walking across rusty fences suspended over a boundless void by rusty chains, it's just like, yeah, I get it. Thank you very much.
You remember?
And with a Resident Evil inspiration, that's a lot less oppressive because they don't actually, like, yeah, okay, maybe things are a bit Umbrella Labs, but it's not like, oh, look at this thing from Resident Evil that we put in here, you know?
Let's use the same symbol, literally.
Yeah. It's Parasol Corp.
Parasol, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, but I find it very charming, but I do think their strengths show when they divert from it. The mine sector reminded me a lot of the mines from Control, which I really like, that kind of quarry aesthetic. It's very underused.
Yeah, that is one of the standout sections in that game. It might be my favorite one. Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, it's very explorative, and you get a lot of freedom there. I like that one a lot. And then the first person sections, I like those too. I just especially the beach ones, they have the most interesting, like the most intriguing things going on, but they're always timed.
Right. But they still feel like they never end. As you saunter along the beach, yeah. I can see that piece of paper. It's just so far away. I'm going so slowly.
You're back. Wake up, Elster. Wake up.
Yeah, that was one of the details. I was sitting there like, I've got to make this make sense to myself. I'm like, nah. Good luck.
Nah. Yeah. So yeah, visual execution for me, solid. Sometimes a little too thick, but overall, well inspired and not too on the nose.
Yeah, I think it's got and surprisingly, of course, I realize I'm talking to somebody who probably uses this style more than most people do, but usually the anime style can look kind of either cheap or just you're going, oh god, here we go, it's one of these people, and then you kind of always preconceived notions about how it's going to be. I like the fact that this doesn't feel like it's, I guess, to use the word the kids use, it's not cringy, it's not
no,
it doesn't feel exploitative or like you're just like, oh god, someone just wanted me to show me their fan art that they've been using. It feels locked in. It's telling the story, and it's a decent art style.
Even though the men and women, man and women in these games, they definitely have a sort of marketability factor to them. I won't deny it. They're not like, they're all cute. They're all cute, but they have such a defined and unique kind of style going on with themselves, and just have like, they're really tall. They have like science fiction police armor. They look cool. They definitely appeal to a certain crowd, which we'll probably get into later. But if you are not aware of these kind of people, you can just look at it and be like, oh, that character looks pretty cool. I like this. Yeah, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you if you thought they looked cool.
No, they're cool. I like their designs, and even though they all stick to a very tight kind of design philosophy, every single one of them is distinct enough to be remembered for their own little quirks.
Certainly. Oh, and just for your own notification, I was trying to drop you a hint there about blame. The manga. You ever seen that?
Ah.
That is the primary visual inspiration for this game. Yeah, just blame with an exclamation point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do know that. I keep mixing up blame and what's the other one? Appleseed? I don't know, but yeah, blame is definitely
it's
very similar.
It's crushingly similar. Black armor, we've got short black hair character with white haired character, little on the nose. In fact, Blame issue 5 has a cover that literally looks like someone is talking to Elster.
Darn, I was unaware of this, but yeah, it's quite. But these designs are way more like exosuity.
Yeah, well, look at the feet of the white-haired one.
The white-haired one. Oh yeah. So ballerina.
Got that exact same feet like all the replicas do. In Signalis.
Yeah. No, I didn't notice. I didn't notice. But this is very similar. But this, yeah.
Cool
looking, yeah, no, definitely. No, I was unaware of that. But yeah, I can. If I weren't able to see the similarities, I would need to see a doctor. But it looks nice. No.
Yeah, it's a good choice. It was cool.
Yeah.
Very kind of like sci-fi SWAT looking.
Yeah. But the they definitely lean more into the sci-fi police in Signalis, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
There's clear like Kevlar patterns, knee pads, shoulder guards, thick plate vests. Yeah.
Sturdy.
And they all carry guns.
But not enough.
We don't have enough guns, yeah. But yeah, visually strong. Anyone would recognize it anywhere, I'd say.
Yeah, it's kind of
very strong identity.
Messy a lot of the time, which I think is pretty good line to walk.
Yeah. It's definitely gory, and there are definitely a few scenes that rattle the bones, but just the overall aesthetic is just really strong. And I'm talking mostly about the characters, because if you take a step back, you look at all the visual designs of Roodfront and Nowhere, it's been done before. I've seen it, and that's not like oh you're uninspired, but it's like it doesn't really stick with me. But when I see the characters, there's a definite like, oh yeah, I know these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't help but you're impressed by if you're well traveled in certain circles, especially if you've gone through as many of the games that are probably obviously, because like I have not actually played anything out of the first 6 Resident Evil Silent Hills, like the first 3 of each, except for Silent Hill 2.
Right.
That's kind of one of my major goals for the next year or two, is to go ahead and play those back. So I only have sort of a inquisitive looking back, finding footage here and there as I need to, kind of thing. So not an experiential recall for those. So I'm maybe more easily impressed than the average person who's like, yeah, I know exactly what they're going for. This other person that's as well traveled in those games as I am.
Yeah, fair enough. But I don't think it's fair of like the audience or the consumer to have that kind of attachment to pre-established IPs that you shouldn't be. Well, that's an interesting topic, right? Like if you are taking such obvious inspirations from certain franchises, should you take into account the judgment that you might receive from either sticking too close to the source material or diverting so far away that it's like, oh yeah, we made it look like it, but we don't give a shit. Like I work on large projects. I have my own animated show. When we look at something, It's always think 3 steps ahead. Yes, in our show, we have a big city with 3 massive walls. People will yell, Attack on Titan, and then I'll tell them, I'm really sorry, but I've never read nor watched it. So some things are also just up to pure coincidence and yeah, stuff like that. But with Signalis, you can't avoid the similarities, or even to a certain extent the fan base crossover. The audience that you're going for is very clearly the kind of audience that enjoyed the games that inspired your game.
Yeah. Well, I think it's much like the boomer shooter kind of renaissance recently that almost seeks to ape by design those things. It feels kind of like where we are with Signalis, where it's all very intentional. I don't think anyone's like thinking they're sneaking one over on you and going, I hope they don't like this. They like this just as much. Like, I mean,
they won't get past me.
Right, just about everything has the name of the thing it is. I mean, obviously there's like some Evangelion references and stuff quite a bit across various motifs and things, so they're not going to be like, you know, TM Evangelion or something, but you know, your King in Yellow, your Butterfly this, your classical music that, you know, that people recognize. It seems like an intentional tapestry that's sort of, maybe it's a little bit shorthand to be kind of like, you know, I'm going to repurpose this here and that'll just, I don't have to do a lot more work.
Well, it doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like it's for the sake of that. That's what I'll give credit for it. It's never for the sake of, it's always, it feels purposeful. It's not like, oh man, I really like this from this franchise, so I want to like shimmy this into our product, because it feels like it belongs there. It never, to me, anything that hit with this game never felt like, oh, you just like this, so you put this in here for the fuck of it.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job of taking like really big, chunky ideas and then sort of melding them together, sort of smoothing out their edges so they sort of flow right into the next one, or don't conflict, or don't feel like they're fighting over real estate.
Yeah. So yeah, that's visuals. I'd say that's visuals and inspiration.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, this story is probably going to take us a whole another day to get through.
Wait. There's one thing I wanted to say.
Go for it.
The only thing that I did not enjoy is the use of 3 languages that are normal languages in your visuals. I don't care. I don't like seeing German, Japanese, and then everyone's talking English. It's like, what?
Yeah, you don't like the what are they, like the multinationalism of the future that everybody always puts in their sci-fi, where everybody's just sort of like weirdly.
Well, I do it. I am a person who does this, but I stick, like I try to melt it, because I'm Dutch. There's very little Dutch representation anywhere, mostly because the language, when we speak it to people who have zero understanding of it, sounds like I am reciting a Lovecraft poem. So what I've done in my world is I've put Dutch words into them, but I have them pronounced the way an American would. And that creates really interesting words. But when you say, okay, we'll do Japanese, German, and English at the same time, things get a bit, what?
Confusing.
Especially because the characters don't talk German. They're named after German names for birds, but they don't speak German.
Right.
They don't speak Japanese.
Yeah, I've heard that that's supposedly like a fun choice that Yuri Stern made based on their heritage being both of those things. So I guess that was sort of like, let's just push that in. Yeah, there are a couple places where, I mean, because it obviously, to the primarily English-speaking audience, it'll probably hit, is going to be fairly it'll just kind of go past you, right? Like it flashes up on screen for half a second, and it's like a dense phrase. It's not just like, Achtung. There's a full paragraph. There's even one paragraph that's actually really important to understanding a relationship that I didn't realize until because someone had translated it in a Reddit post. And I just thought, it's got to be in a note somewhere. And it was called a memory. And, you can find it. If you go to the wiki, you can find all these little things that they classify as memories as well. That you're like, what's in a note? It should be in a dream diary or something. It's not. It's a flash screen that's on there for about a second or two. And it's a full-on paragraph about how it's about the bullying episode where they find her, she gets beat up, and then Erica comes to her rescue, whereas Issa freezes up. Yeah. And they become friends because of it, because like she takes care of her, and that kind of solidifies how their relationship started. That's not anywhere except that one German flash screen. Yeah, and it sets up Issa's psychology too, about how she says, "I feel useless because I didn't do anything," and then that kind of informs how she is in the game, where she's sort of eternally searching for purpose and this and that. And it's like that's a steep ask that anyone's going to get that, right? Or take the time. But to also,
like for someone who speaks neither language, it's easy to gloss over. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's just flavor, but I have a basic conversational understanding of German because I've had it in school, and I understood these things, and I saw some of these things just flash by or on a poster, and I'm like, a lot of people won't understand this, and it does like world building, it does storytelling, and I just feel that's poor. I just feel it's poor because you're making the game in English and you're putting like information. I'll just keep it very vague, very simple. You keep content behind a language barrier. Luckily they hit it big. Luckily people are out there who are like, oh, don't worry, love. Here, I have the full translation for the flash on the screen. And that's really nice. But imagine if this game reached like 500 people, they'd be like Google translating it for themselves. It's like, I
do quite a bit of that myself.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Self-imposed.
Yeah. So
that, there's always danger in doing that too. If you start basing your ideas off of your Google Translate, they're going to be like, bro, this isn't translated right. You misunderstood.
What do you mean purple dog? I haven't seen any purple dogs.
Right. What do you mean? I thought that was pretty important. I don't know why you guys are shouting me down.
I thought the purple dog was a thorough line in the narrative.
The purple dog was the friends we made along the way.
I agree. So that's my asterisk on the visuals.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think there is a certain level, and this can probably lead us into our story figuring out too. There is a certain every time I see a game like this, and it's funny because I've basically been studying 4 or 5 different David Lynch inspired works recently. It's been Alan Wake 2, Signalis, Virginia, and there was one other one. I even was watching a movie the other day. It's like it's inspired by Dylan Dog. Have you ever seen that Italian comic? Kind of a supernatural detective thing, and it was called Cemetery Man, or in Italian it was Della Morte Della More. And it even has the Isle of the Dead mural, or Isle of the Dead is a sculpture, which is kind of a fun little Signalis thing I just happened to run into. Anyway, all these kind of deal in withholding narratives. Sometimes rewarding, other times it feels like it's being, as the rest of development would say, gets off on being withholding.
Yeah. As someone who, if I may interrupt, of course, as someone who pretty strongly subscribes to David Lynch's mental, I find him a very, very interesting, very influential director, and a very wise man. What I admire about someone like him, contrary to people like Kojima, I always call Kojima the retroactive genius, because his fans will figure it out, and to everything he'll say yes. Different topic. David Lynch if you ask him, "Oh, what's your movie about this?" He'll just say, "You figure it out." And I like that. I like it. He makes things from a spiritual standpoint. He puts it to paper. He tells his story, but he subscribes to the idea that anyone who sees this is allowed to have their own interpretation, and nobody should get from it what he got from it, because at the end of the day it's art piece, and I respect that a lot. The problem is with Lynch inspired things is that most of these people try and be obscure and then get mad when you don't put the pieces together, because they do have a story they want to tell.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't think Lynch is immune to it either.
No, but who is?
Well, the thing that I think the specifics are where we'll kind of bear it out, because people can kind of feel like they're rebuffing, like, hey man, don't make him explain everything. It's like, well, it doesn't explain everything, but if we're going to explain that much, we probably should go a little bit further on some other things.
Yeah.
Because for instance, Twin Peaks: The Return is a pretty good example of where Lynchiisms start to kind of either feel overbearing, or it's like he tries to appease the other side too much, where it's like, I'm just going to dump on you about, like, for instance,
very cynical.
What Judy is. And it's like, it's sort of you can tell it's not his wheelhouse, and maybe even begrudgingly so. It could even be a little bit petty, where he's doing his, revenge every time you try and get me to pin me down. But it's like, at a certain point, you do want to have
something to hold on to.
Let me phrase it this way.
Ambiguous
narratives are not in and of themselves, quote unquote, problematic, or should be avoided at all costs. I'm not a very big postmodern person. I think it's sort of a pariah, because it allows people to hide behind murkiness and present that as depth, and you just don't get it.
Shield.
Yeah, when it's almost, I wouldn't say almost always, it feels very seldom like it's not just, it's a vibe, man. And it's like, well, it's not really a statement that's really edifying or gives me much to chew on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to get high off of your not very, or it's not a very long high, let's put it that way. So I do think there's a trap where you can only be elusive for so long before you kind of need to, if it's, in other words, it's like a choose your own adventure, like it could be a couple different things, kind of solidify those things for us a little bit more, and then let us play around with it. I think Signalis does a good job of kind of giving us 3 or 4 different readings of itself that kind of, they crumble if you go too far, but you can get pretty far into each one of them, and you kind of feel justified. I think that's, if it's intentional, it's masterful. Even if it's accidental, it's still pretty cool. It does a better job with that than a lot of things, and I kind of had to back off at a certain point, because I realized that none of them, I could never account for all the metaphysical rules of how you got here to get to there. And so I had to kind of really pull back and make my interpretation sort of more of a framework interpretation, versus trying to, what was that? What was that hidden thing? Does that mean something? And trying to pin everything down and make everything talk to itself, which is sometimes hard, because I'm more of a, to use a big word, exegetical or exegesis oriented person, where I kind of want the thing to talk to itself and tell you what it means. You can only get so far with this game. So
before we get into specifics, I'd like to say that because I haven't done research, I have played the game and I've made up my own mind, which at least what you're getting is what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. As a first playthrough observation of everything that is presented, I feel that a lot of it doesn't have a satisfying conclusion, or at least a conclusion. I had a lot of things going through my brain, a lot of red wires. And then when the game ended, I was like, okay, what about everything else?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the rub with me with these Lynchian type things. Not to just keep blaming him for it, but they're all certainly pretty directly inspired by him. playing with the same fun elements, is that I feel like a lot of times these mystery stories, and I think I kind of touched on this in my Virginia video where I kind of try to communicate this, so maybe I can do as good or better this time around. It's like it gets you invested in the mystery so much, and it is about the details. It is about specifically what you're hiding and what you're kind of the bounds that you're setting. You're like, oh my gosh, what's out there? What's hiding behind that rock underneath this? And you start getting really invested in the fun of feeling like you're kind of inside the mystery on a level playing field with it, as opposed to sort of looking at it from sort of an authorial perspective, where it's maybe just a playground for you to talk about some deep thing, or it's maybe an allegory or something. You start getting invested in the solving of the mystery, and then it pulls back and goes, just kidding, the answer doesn't matter. It's about the feelings you had along the way. And it's like, I don't feel like we have to choose. And it's always this escape where they kind of fade into the bushes like Homer Simpson, and then they kind of go, ooh. And you're like, yeah, but you sort of, that is a cop out. If you get, like, you thought about it too hard to get to this point, and then just backed off at the end. And I'm like, the amount of horror movies, and specifically, that fail because their final act just has no idea what to do with the concept anymore. It's like, why, when y'all do so much work to make this interesting and engaging, do we just sort of put the mic down and just leave the stage and go, your time, you get up here. I'm like,
like that's how I felt when the game ended, and I'll keep it vague so we can go into it naturally. But when the game ended, I was like, so you give me everything, and you loop all the way back to the start and said, well, you did what you said at the start, goodbye, curtain call. And I was like, what?
You video gamed.
Yeah. And I was like, what? Is this it? I was like, okay. On one end, I appreciated it because it kind of like gave me a big middle finger, and it was well done. But on the other end, I was like, really? You have all this world building, everything you introduced across the 7 hours that this game is, and you just say, that's all, folks.
Didn't you feel something?
Yeah, I felt mad.
Oh, I had feelings.
I wanted to know about the Flash. I wanted to know about what the fuck Adler was all about. And then, well, I said I'd find you. Here we are. And missing footage.
And it's kind of funny too, because I realized that was sort of this weird agreed upon thing with people who really like the game, was that they're like, oh, it's just all about the love story, and you're like, well, I mean, I can see that maybe that could be your core, sure.
That's why,
and I don't hate that, but at the same time, it doesn't really inform. Maybe because stories that aren't detailed don't have to be in video games, right? Because you're kind of doing the detail, and you kind of get the satisfaction of feeling like you've solved a problem or had a cool kind of mythological experience. And Signalis isn't bad at that per se, and I don't even know if the endings are really bad. It's just, it feels like there's so much stuff swirling in the mist, and you kind of want to engage it and really get a lot out of it, give you something to chew on, and then it sort of retreats at weird moments. And if you're really trying to figure it out, because one thing I tried to kind of put forth in my video is, like, a lot of people will kind of shout you down when you try to explain too much. Yeah. And I'm kind of like, why is that so accepted within this community that you, especially for people that could just conjure up, you say a line of text and they go, oh, that's Dreamer Diary, page number 3, found in the Rotfront bathroom or something, and you're like, good gracious. It's like they've ingested it and made it, they're a big filing cabinet of knowledge. And then you'll still get this like, well, it's all up to interpretation.
And if you walk up to them and it's like, so what do you think the mental deterioration of Adler resulted in after these countless cycles that he presents in his diary? And they'll just go, whatever you think.
Right. Yeah, I had to take a break from that Reddit because I was really leaning on them in a lot of places, and they really helped me at the end of my my production here in this video I'm making. Just found stuff. I mean, found tweets from Yuri Stern from like a year ago or 5 months ago or something. I was like, good gracious, how do they have this on call like this? And it was awesome. But there were a couple of times where I just would run into it and I would get this really subjectivist reading. And I'm like, I feel like that's another thing that kind of frustrates me about this game is like when it's elusive in an unsatisfying way, people are almost like congratulating it for saying nothing there. And for having nothing to say, and it's like that is not laudable, and it makes me really feel like these people aren't people who have to write. They just sort of intake, and they don't care, so they just kind of get off on the feeling of I don't have to run it down, therefore I don't need you to try and make me feel like I should.
I'm
like,
but that comes back to what I said at the start of this conversation. It's a good game, but it's overrated.
Yeah, I think it's probably true, and that's not. And I tried to be fair when I was talking about it in my own ramblings about it, where I wasn't, where I was critical of a lot of the actual gameplay, but trying to praise. I mean, it's got a really good sense of kind of those like that fake out ending, for instance, that sequence.
Yeah,
that's really cool. And it's really well paced, and like the music and the visuals sync up really well, and that kind of thing. There's the mood and the atmosphere and the just the feel, kind of the buzzing you get from the game. Kind of the skin that or the hair that rises on your skin kind of thing it's really solid. They've got a lot of talent, especially since there's really only 2 people that did the majority of it. That's not to be downplayed.
That's also why I can't like shit on it too much, because it's still a Herculean effort, and especially on a really tight budget, you can't really take in everything into account. You can't like run it by an editor like I would. Like I write a script, it's like 70 pages, and I message my editor and I'm like, hey, can you have a look over this and what do you think? And I feel just like, and I'm gonna say Hideo Kojima again. If and also by extent Hideaki Anno, if an author wants to express themselves, and especially the author types, the grandeur, publiché extraordinaire, we are amazing kind of types, if you want to get the best out of people like that, you need a good producer. I feel this is very echo chamber. That's why we get the results that we've gotten. And I am not sure if it was, but it feels very isolated, the production.
Yeah, I think it's got a really good grasp of how to take like the max amount of assets and things and put them together in a way that doesn't just seem like you're sort of running up the score or trying to go for broke. There's definitely something pretty interesting about it. And it's almost intentionally like this kind of collage or feeling to it, where it sort of feels very dreamlike and recollective in the way it's made, not just in what it's talking about. I think that's pretty interesting. I think it's probably that is one of the benefits, I think, of kind of the ambiguities. You've got a lot of things to ponder and go over. Is that while it can be the most frustrating if you're trying to quote unquote figure it out, because you get given so much detail, you kind of get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm starting to vibe along, play along with it, and then you can't play along. I think that's the frustrating part for someone like me. Because a lot of people misinterpret that as you trying too hard to like own the story. And it's like,
but how can you try too hard when the information density is so high? It's not like they are leaving blanks. The people that created this game give you a lot to work with. It's okay to think about that. Like for the longest time, I was sitting there and I'm like, these robot girls, they used to be, they're like cyborg clones of real people, and I really like that. I like that idea. I like the idea of like the Flash. I like the idea of the time loop contingency plan with the Adler. That was all really interesting. And then the finale was I did what I said I would do. I love you. And it's fine to me.
Yeah.
But everything else, to me, kind of goes to waste in favor of that.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of asking you to be sort of still invested in the kind of the gameplay side of things, and then sort of go back into this sort of hands off, put the controller down, be in your feelings approach, kind of back to back. And that maybe I'm trying too hard to like make those some big allegorical contrast or some symbolic contrast between the two at the end, but there's probably a little bit of that where you kind of get sucked into one part of it, the gaminess of it, and then you're pulled back out, and then you kind of, I think a comment on this and the thing I was writing was that like I felt like I was sometimes too so distracted by the going around and around and around trying to find this little thing that unlocks this little thing over here, that once the story comes into play, it's almost like I don't have time to or the mental faculties left to sit there and parse out why this matters, and so it sort of just goes over your head, or you can't account for it unless you're going back in and just digging and digging and digging. And even then, it's fairly maddening because you just find so many inconsistencies, intentional or otherwise, that make your, okay, this is my mode of interpretation. I'm going to keep with this. It's all a dream, or the king in yellow is the start of everything, or maybe there's all 5 of these things are going on at once, and you have to try to figure out where one stops. And it's just like, and it's kind of cool and it's fun, but I guess to me, like, I kind of want a little bit more of a defensible reading of what I'm doing. Or what the game is about. Like, sell me your concept and let me have fun mulling it over,
especially,
as opposed to just being like, you make it up. Because then it's like, well, then I just write my own story. Like, why don't I
But especially when later onwards in the game, time frames and time loops and passage of time are all thrown at you and taken into consideration in the storytelling. I was just kind of sitting here and I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. And then it amounts to something, but a lot of it is just
mostly symbolic. Yeah.
It's mostly symbolic, and that's where I got a little annoyed. I was like, oh, this reminds me of another game I like, Lobotomy Corporation, where an AI is trapped in an infinite time loop to try and solve some kind of biblical mystery. And then it amounted to nothing. Well, I think mental deterioration over incomprehensible amounts of experience is a phenomenal concept of science fiction. Like, if you are immortal, and you are stuck in Groundhog Day, and you are the only person who recounts every single loop, then you're going to go insane. And we kind of get that with Adler, but not really.
Yeah, that part didn't bother me, which is funny because I usually don't like time travel.
Right.
Like, it seems really cool, and it's like almost something that's more interesting to do in real life, or to think about in real life, however you would account for that. In real life, but symbolically here, I think it does its job because it accurately describes the metaphor of what they're going for. It's like, I'm stuck, just endless boredom, tedium, and then I get out here and now it's just endless suffering, this kind of thing. So it's got a very poetic bent to it.
Yeah,
that I think makes it a lot more palatable than it normally is. Because like Bioshock Infinite's ending, for instance, always drives me crazy because it's so contrived as to where it applies the rules. It's like everything's infinite, but also we just get to stop and start right here, and it affects all the other ones, and that kind of thing. And I'm just like, God, I fucking hate time travel stories. Everything's a paradox, and it just it tells you when it wants to apply the rules and when it doesn't, and it sort of ruins the fun for someone who pays attention more than the average person does, and like it's just, I guess it's just too easy for me to see through these things. So
fair enough.
So that part of it, I'm not trying to disagree with you, but to say it didn't bother me like I thought it would, because I felt like it was weird enough. Like it kind of used the trope to highlight that she shouldn't be here. Why is she here? Like when he's talking about Elster, the orange chest plated or whatever robot that he sees. We've never had an Elster out here. What's she doing here? Why is the date repeating and all this kind of stuff? Which isn't inherently interesting in of itself, but it's like, well, it's because it's probably generating from her mind, and kind of being played back on everybody else, and that's why they're freaking out. And that was kind of a cool idea. It doesn't really, at a certain point, it doesn't really have any poetic effect to me. It's just sort of like, yeah, man, it's like reality just being put together and smushing things to, like, these things are colliding into each other, kind of an event horizon type thing. It's like, okay, now we're just having genre fun, but
but then you have this, which it's really interesting, right? We can talk about this a lot.
Sure.
And then the end is, I said, I did what I said I would. I love you. And if you hear us, right, as someone who has zero understanding of this game, and you hear us have this discussion about like a temporal loop and an event horizon, and then I tell you the end is, I did what I said I would. I love you. Nothing matters.
Yeah, nothing else.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
Because that's the conclusion. Is, to me, is as long as I'm with you, nothing else matters. Which is good. It's a nice message,
right?
But it is not the kind of cookie cutter. It's like the ending to one of those bog standard Christmas movies. No,
and that's
it's cute.
Yeah. Kind of the struggle.
Yeah, like I don't hate it, but it's how would I describe it? It's underwhelming.
Yeah, well, I think it's reasonable to feel that way because, like, Alan Wake 2 kind of hit me the same way a little bit.
Right.
It sort of thinks it's being pithy, and it's not that it's against what they're going for. It's just if, like, you're living it out and you get to the end, you kind of, like, maybe feel like there wasn't enough there to kind of make you feel like you've arrived. You know, you came to the top of the mountain kind of thing, which is
small Alan Wake 2 spoiler alert here. I'll just put it here.
I'll keep it vague since we're off topic.
I want to say something specific.
Sure, go ahead.
For just so small spoiler warning. I hate that I can't judge it because it's not done after 13 years.
Right.
I feel like I have to reserve my judgment for when they release the eventual finale, whatever that may be, because they have put together all of their franchises into one. I love it though, but yeah. Is it underwhelming to have a inconclusive ending after 13 years? Yes, it is.
Yeah, and we don't even have to keep this in, but yeah, just for fun's sake, we can probably just let it rip. Alan Wake 2 to me doesn't move the needle far enough to feel like it's worth the experience. Like it feels like a solid attempt, but very safe in the way that it implements its gameplay. It feels like a really tampered down Resident Evil 2. It feels like it knows exactly what it's drawing from, takes the bare minimum, and it adds some really cool things like the shadows being, you know, inconsistently scary or threatening. You know, you don't know which one is going to attack you, that kind of thing. There's definitely flourishes, but I don't know that the story moves along. Like it treats the old characters like shit. The new ones are the only people that do anything. They're kind of flat.
I really like Saga.
I don't dislike her. She's barely better than Jessie in some aspects, and she was also just this blank slate. Like she's too game for everything. Granted, she's a lot more interesting than Jessie is. Jessie's just sort of like a vibe. She's like a fan fiction that someone's playing out in their mind. But,
right.
Yeah, the ending of Alan Wake 2 is, I mean, granted, the final draft is, I'm hearing a lot of people say it really makes it a lot better, whatever that means. They also said it was fantastic the first time, so who knows what the fuck their opinion means. But,
I really liked it. For what it's worth, I really liked it as a... I think it has problems. It definitely has problems. But as a whole, if you put everything together, put a nice little bow on it, it's good. It's really good. It's very experimental. It gives a lot of middle fingers to a lot of very basic things and very basic traps that a lot of stories and games fall into. The combat does not work in tight corridors.
No, it's awful. It can't. It's the same problem most survival horror has, where it can't handle more than like 2 or 3 enemies. But anyway,
Yeah.
tell you what, let's go ahead and save this because I really want to talk about Alan Wake 2. And I need to finish the final draft mode, and then we can probably do a whole other episode on that. I'll just save it because we've got so much to talk about in Signalis. But yeah, I'm very excited to do an Alan Wake 2.
Okay. Let's go back to story. So we've discussed presented narratives.
Did you want to, if I'm not interrupting your train of thought too much, did you want to kind of give me your summation of what you thought happened? And I'll kind of give you my summation theory as well.
Yeah, I'll give you my theory. It's a little busted because I went through the game very with hoops because I've been busy and I was stuck on that bit for a bit because I was just frustrated with it. But to me, I feel the robot, the player character Elster. I feel like Elster is and I'm not sure if it is because that's the problem with this game. She feels like a copy of someone else that still has the same desires that the non-copy had before the kind of cyborgification, transfer, cloning, whatever the fuck. And what happened is it feels in a very broad sense, it's the game sort of symbolizes internal struggle due to mental and societal chains by someone who desires to spread their wings. And then love story. I have a little love story. But overall, yeah, I feel it's a representation of being chained and conditioned into a certain life where you wish you could take more risks, where everything just kind of encroaches around you, where every light goes dark, every day is the same, everything you have to do is you have to work to live. It's like they're stuck. It's like a scream for help. That's what the game feels like to me.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
That's true, but they are in space, but they're also on a planet, so maybe you can hear them scream.
Just a little bit.
The monsters definitely scream, so I think.
Yeah, they always seem like xenomorphs to me. Another alien.
Yeah. The necromorphs and shit. Yeah. So that's my broad interpretation, but like in the game, it's just like you're a robot with a prime directive. You complete it.
Nice.
That's what the game does to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and it's interesting that you've kind of kept it abstract as opposed to trying to engage with all the sci-fi mechanisms or I guess even the kind of fantasy or supernatural mechanisms, everything, which probably is a good idea. It's definitely a mode because I think as much as is going on in Signalis, it goes really far with certain concepts, and then you kind of have to wonder if some of it's just arbitrary. Yeah. This is just something I thought was cool. This is what I wanted to do. Alan Wake 2, I think, kind of exhausted me because I think at a certain point it is just riffing. To just give you a point of reference, it is just sort of playing with its food and just sort of hamming it up and just playing around.
Yeah.
I mean,
delightfully though. To a certain extent.
Sometimes, and then other times it's like you've told me the same thing 80 times, and now we're just like playing the same. You're just improvising. And it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. And there's probably a little bit of that in Signalis where it's like everything, and it kind of plays with you because you remember that the pareidolia puzzle with the butterfly wings?
Yeah.
So the meaning of the word is basically like looking at an image and starting to see something that may or may not be there. Like you almost sort of convince yourself there's more going on there. So there's this sort of intentional irony to the way it's put together, just in and of itself, where they're messing with you and then they kind of ask you to start caring, but also I already told you could be messing with you.
Yeah.
And you kind of just go, woo, and just cycle around.
It's very
and around.
carrot and stick.
Yeah. And then they're like, by the way, what carrot and stick are you talking about? And you're like, wait, the one you just, wait a minute, where'd it go? And they sort of
where's the carrot and the stick?
Right. The carrot and the stick is a lie.
Sorry, we had a Dead Space narrative. Now we're switching to Silent Hill, and you have to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Enjoy your references.
Yeah. Here's the reference. Look, giant butthole in the floor.
Go in at your peril. Yeah, I think I landed on, because there's a couple different variations where people are like,
what does Reddit have to say?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the funny thing, is the guy I'm actually going to talk about is actually the moderator of the Reddit, as well as that Christopher Beast guy. I know he hates the dream theory, or I say he hates it. He doesn't. He tries to argue around it, basically.
Oh, so everything was a dream?
Yes.
Right.
And people don't like that, even though the literal first trailer was called A Dream About Dreaming. So good luck getting away from that one. But
do lesbian androids dream of lesbian sheep?
Yes, indeed. Which, of course, there are some definite Blade Runner replicant bleed overs and whatnot, and red eyes everywhere, and all this.
Well, when there is no one to question, when there's no human to question the humanity of the androids.
Yeah, wasn't that interesting how it seems like it would be kind of we're the enslaved robot race, and then like everywhere you go, the robot race is sort of in the highest.
Yeah, but they're also fucked up. Like, you find these big like document prints about each personality type and each model, and they're all messed up. It's like they took the absolute worst brain scan candidates possible and said, okay, we'll make you 7 feet tall and give you a massive shotgun. Nothing can go wrong.
Well, actually, I would rebuff that in that I think that if you're going to play along with the theme of it, they're saying that's just the problem of being human at all. And these are just, they have the exact same problems as a human has, and you have to account for them. In fact, the reason they seem unhuman is because you're treating them like they don't have these problems. You're trying to avoid the issues all the time. You're never solving anything. And then you see that, like, when Elster basically just gets in touch with her humanity, or whatever you want to call it. And
Pinocchio moment.
Deal with her like PTSD and like, I like girls and all this kind of stuff. She has the more full life because of it.
Right. But like I said, it is hard to because I felt, especially when you go to a more like philosophical angle about the existence as an android, or the mindsets, the production, how do they function in this society, we don't see any humans, because the colony that they are on is like in a really shitty environment. So yeah, most of the robots only survived. All the humans are dead or evacuated, and there was a big war. And I'm like, yeah, but we're missing an angle here, at least to me.
So you're saying the absence of humans means what now?
It's a hard reference point. It's like, because it feels like these robots are the only thing that are there, and that is not a problem, but why make them robots at that point?
Yeah, it is sort of a subtle distinction that almost doesn't matter, but then it's sort of like intentionally doesn't matter because they're branded off of people. That's sort of the problem with the problem, assuming we assume it's a problem because they're not perfect and without problems, which is why we made them in the first place.
But nobody makes an issue about them not being perfect. It's just listed on the documents, and that's like everything that we get.
Yeah, and what's also that there's that idea that technology is stagnated because they've got they've got the Song of the Gods. They can basically tap into space magic and make all this stuff happen. They don't quite know how it happens. They just know that it's working, so they just kind of keep leaning into it, which I thought was kind of a cool idea. I don't know. There's probably something interesting to be said about that and how it interacts with like what replicas end up being. It may not be. It may just be like just sci-fi rules and regulations type of thing. That's just the way it is. But yeah. So as far as interpretations go, I had assumed, like, my reading is, it is a dream. It's a bioresident dream, so it's basically like a dream being projected kind of back, out from somebody. But I think every time, because every time I tried to make it make sense temporally, and again, this could just be, the author could just say, yeah, that's what I meant to do. It's all
retroactive things. Genius.
In other words, stop trying to smooth out all the rough edges, just trying to cover everything, and it's messy, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. I mean, it very well could be. I was kind of I realized I was coming at it from the wrong angle by trying to explain too much or figure out like what the mode was, when it really should just be thought of as like, this is a conveniently constructed reality, not just inside the game. Like, the game is literally telling you, I'm constructing a reality with my dreams because I can. That's what my powers mean. It was like, this is constructed this way just to get you the information you need to care about what's going on.
Right.
And that's sort of the conceit of the story, which shouldn't need to be said necessarily.
Right.
I think it's probably going to solve a lot of people's headaches that they are trying to figure it all out. That it's like, eventually you just have to kind of realize it's sort of like a play. It's sort of a, these are contrived sequences that feel like maybe they mean more, but you don't have to really parse your mellow too hard, trying to justify it all. It's not that they mean anything, because obviously, like, they mean something. It's not just a love story. I think that's sort of reductive to the point of being disrespectful to the fact they did create some cool ideas here that you want to play around with. But
but it is. I think what the biggest problem is there's too much to ignore, and at the end of the road, there's not enough to appreciate. Like, there are. I have once written a really brutal review for a CRPG, and it came down to so many words on the screen, yet nothing to say. Signalis is a much less offender of that, but the fact that there's so little tangible payoff does make the absolute lore bombs that they drop kind of redundant, because at the end of the day, you're really invested in this world. You want to know what happened. You want to know what's what, and then it ends before you get the answer. And I as someone who is a screenwriter, if they want to do that, they do that. I don't care. But I feel that it's a waste of potential, because you have some really, really nice things going on, and leaving them up to interpretation is, I'd like to see what you think, I'd like to see what the author thinks.
Yeah, I know the thing that kind of weirds me out about the interpretation discussion in the first place, and we were kind of hinting at it earlier, was this: we've got sort of this strong voice in the community of this game that talks down to people trying to know too much. And there's probably, and there's a certain point which I will have to give it to them, that there's just certain things you're not really going to figure out.
Right.
Because they either just don't matter that much, or you're just being trying to be too comprehensive in what you understand. Maybe you just need that psychologically to function or something. It's not that important. But but people kind of take that, because that exists, there's a point in which you probably need to kind of just like disengage, to mean that I can kind of move that slider down all the way to when you just get started and go, don't worry about it, man. You're like, I just started to ask a basic question. I don't need you to tell me to get off the interpretation train here. And so it's kind of frustrating too, as you've seen a little bit of that from Yuri Stern, where they're like, none of the endings are real or canon.
There is no good or happy ending. They are all valid.
And that's probably actually what they said. I think someone said the other day none of them were canon. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they didn't say that.
No, that's not what they said. They said there's no good, no bad ending. Everything is up to interpretation, and everything has its own pros and cons.
And that's got some value to it, and that's a defensible thing, because that's not really like saying you can't have any of your cake and eat it too. It's more like just saying I'm intentionally kind of giving you some ingredients, and you kind of make the best version of a cake. We're all making cake here, but you have fun with it. Go as far as you can go with it.
Yeah.
But but that's also something a little bit like, because I kind of want to know a little bit more about what influence the King in Yellow has, if anything, because it was kind of my understanding that he was more of a metaphor, that he was sort of being read back into the story kind of for flavor text, or just for flavor in a way. Like this feels like when the King in Yellow does this, because like the backstory on the King in Yellow is that, he comes to societies that are in shambles, that are kind of like on the verge of collapse, and he basically just pushes them over the edge, and spirits either them away or like people in them away to Carcosa, and he's just kind of just a vulture, right? And I thought, well, that's kind of a cool way to do it, because this is a world that no matter which side you're on, it kind of sucks. And so it's not really a safe haven, and it's sort of supposed to be a metaphor for, I'm sure it's a lot of things. I'm sure it's like even goes down to like sexual identity, this kind of stuff, and all that, because I think there's a little bit of that going on as well. Probably a big metaphor for that.
There's definitely a sort of behind the curtains abuse thing that is being pushed.
What qualifies as identity, what parts are yours, what you get to define, and all this kind of stuff. And that's certainly...
And outside factors influence judgment.
Mm-hmm. And the King in Yellow is supposed to kind of represent the the oppressive, kind of like you feel like you're under the sway of like unbeatable forces and stuff. So that I kind of got the impression that, despite them describing monsters and certain things like beneath the ice and stuff like that, I was like, I just don't really feel like he's really there. I feel like he's sort of, maybe it's just, it feels to me like they're sort of getting to have the vibe of him being there without him actually being there. It's not really a Cthulhu monster. Except that it is, because for gameplay purposes or something. I always felt like Ariana was still in control of everything. It was just that we were having to experience all of her feelings and all of her emotions, and some of them are super negative, and some of them are repurposing freaky shit to illustrate what it feels like. So that was sort of my interpretation. This is a dream, and the parts of it that feel like they're supernaturally influenced from specifically non-human entities are probably not real. Or at least important that they're real.
But if it's all a dream, okay, I'm getting wacky with you now.
Let's get wacky.
If it's all a dream, is Elster real, or is Elster a self-imposed sort of psychological defense mechanism against trauma? And this is not something that I think. Mm-hmm. But I just want to discuss it from this angle.
No, I'm glad you actually asked this, because this is actually what I was getting at with the stage play.
Right.
Because it's basically, to me, it seemed that the game really doesn't make a lot of sense if you try and like figure out space-time references.
Yeah, because anything that would happen if the game were to happen the way it plays out, it doesn't make any logical sense.
Yeah, and it's really hard to try and figure out what the rules are and how you get from one place to the other. And then when everything is technically kind of possible because bioresonance, then it becomes even more
but if you
unnecessary to figure out how things.
If you give it that much freedom, there's nothing tangible left. So we do have to. I'd say, especially in favor of this discussion, we should subscribe to the idea that bioresonance is not like a thing that actively influences the events of the stories. So, because we could explain away nearly everything with bioresonance, and that kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, I think we can have it both ways, because I think you're trying to have a present reading out, like this is happening to us right now as we live it out and play it out.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably more in line with the thing that it's a dream and not a dream you wake up from. See, that's the difference. I think it's important what the things mean. It's not that you're going to wake up from the dream. It's that it is like a dream experientially, but it's a dream that is very conveniently recalling only the information that we need to know and care about as an audience. And so it's really it's completely contrived. So it's not following.
Yeah, like a boxed-in coping mechanism.
Yeah, I mean it's a snow globe essentially.
Yeah,
it's there intentionally on purpose to be a microcosm or sort of a playing out, an illustration of what I feel like, what I'm telling you. And you say, well, isn't it just art? Yeah, but this is a little bit more like role oriented, where like people matter and like what they're doing is important. Just they're like, everybody has a little bit of a purpose. They're kind of talking to each other. What do they illuminate about each other? Like they're all very intentional, like symbols and reflections and mirrors to tell you like, what should you think about this person? And then, it feels sort of like, I don't know if allegory is really the right term for it. I feel like that's a little bit more specific or more loaded term than I really want to go for. But that is what Signalis feels like. And that's probably where I can, in my opinion, a better compromise between let's explain everything and then let's not worry about any of it, to where it's more like, well, you worry about you worry about as much as it'll let you worry about it. You don't sit there and just get off immediately and go, I don't need to worry about that. That's not important. It's like, well, they put it in the game for a reason, because I can tell you that not just because it exists, but because it, the time travel indicates this. It illustrates how it feels to go about these cycles, blah, 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 blah. And you can kind of extrapolate from there.
I feel the most unfortunate thing that is that the fate that this game suffered onto the most vocal part of the fan base that it has connected with detracts from its qualities. And not directly, but indirectly and through osmosis, I feel that the intended experience, whatever that may be, is watered down by osmosis. Because most of the content that I see of it online has very little to do with what it is all about.
Yeah, or it's like if you're more of a gameplay guy or something, you might get much less out of it than someone else who's sitting there who tells you they're getting more out of the story, but then they just sort of give you this really sentimental basic reading.
Yeah.
And you're like, but you're not even paying attention to enough stuff to appreciate. And that's kind of what I was noticing when I was trying to come with this master theory. I was like, it feels like the more I pay attention, I'm kind of playing into the whole, I'm messing with you on purpose thing. I'm the author. I'm intentionally messing with you. But then it was like, but in order to appreciate it at all, I had to go down this rabbit hole in the first place.
Yeah.
It was like I had to at least test the bounds of the ideas to really appreciate what was going on, because I can sit there and go, I mean, it feels kind of cool and it feels kind of scary, but that just doesn't mean it. That's just like, I mean, you just sort of zombie your way through life if that's the way you experience things, especially things people make on purpose. That's, art. It's artificial. It's artifice. It's intentionally trying to get you to feel a certain way or think everything's saying something. So for someone to sit there and just go, oh, it's just about how deep love is.
I just like the power of love and just navigating this dangerous environment. And it's fine. Valid. But I do feel that because that is the love story is something that gets very disproportionately represented online. I just feel that is a disservice to what it is, what the product is. I feel if that is your takeaway, that is good for you, but I feel that you are doing this product a disservice. Yeah. And then that's just in general, just to whine a bit, it's just in general, a lot of people are like drones. They like, oh, new shiny trailer, must shell out $60 and buy next one next year without too much thought. And that's fine. I envy you if you're listening. I envy you.
Stay on your side of the tracks and I'll stay over here. But see, that's the thing. That's kind of like, I mean, I can say a lot of things that will piss a lot of people off. Not that
I can too. I'm very good at it.
Like, there's a certain point at which the rubber meets the road where it becomes very apparent that people aren't just saying they had this really subjective experience, which betrays the whole point of like postmodern storytelling, is that it's ultimately going to be up to the audience. You can't have it both ways. You can't have there and someone tell you a story and then go, the story means whatever I want it to. It's like, well, then you're writing the story at that point.
Yeah.
Go, no. There's a handoff. I know when it starts and when it stops. And then they tell you how to think about how, when you start trying to think about it, it's like, why do you get to have that interpretation? And it gets to be all subjective. Like, don't tell me what to think, but you're not worried at all about anyone else. It's like, you clearly have an ownership, which means you think it's saying something, which means there's something to hold on to. And that there's a defensible, argumentative thing, and that the people that have these perspectives are never good at arguing them. Take for instance, the Lilith bros, the people that think that Lilith E2 is the gestalt for Elster.
Right.
And it's not that it inherently isn't her, because she is kind of the ground zero for like, who could it be? Who do you think out of the people on that postcard, if you know what I'm talking about, the list of people that they think on that postcard in Alina So's unit that could be her. Like, who's the one that's her lover or whatever on that team? And they go, Lilith E2, obviously, because Lilith is an important name in mythology, and she's the mother of either all demons, or she's the mother of I guess she's the mother of humankind in Evangelion, which is important because there's a lot of Evangelion references, and she has the same last name as the sisters, Issa and Erica E2.
Yeah.
And go, it's got to be her though. And you're like, I mean, it could be. It's just, it is on its face worth your attention, but there's nothing in the game that suggests it. And then it goes even further, where they patched the game out to where there was a note in the twins' medical files that looks like it's coming from like Mama E2 basically, but it just says E2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they think, oh, well, that's got to be from Lilith. And then they actually patched the game, put a completely different name in there that says, I'm actually their mother. I'm Anja or Anya, however you say that.
Yeah. I saw that.
And to me, that might be Rose Engine kind of baking mystery into the game when someone gets too close to the truth.
Yeah.
It could be that's cynically motivated, or it could be someone just thinking, no, I don't think you're even close to the right track. Let me dissuade you from going there.
From the interactions I've seen online, and I'll take the ending discussion as a baseline here.
Sure.
It seems like the people who have created it have drawn a similar conclusion to what I have. It's like, yes, what we present and what you guys represent and take away from it is definitely there, but it is a bit of a disservice. It is not exactly what you should be like losing sleep over, like, because that's like the kind of stuff where I go like, don't you have anything better to do?
Don't tell that to me for the last 5 months.
Oh.
Yeah, of course, it's just sort of a fun challenge, because like I have this like weird thing where it's like I kind of want it to be like the best possible thing I can make about this one thing, and it's got to be like comprehensive as fuck. And then I make it, and that's kind of like my challenge to myself. I'm going to make Signalis matter to me. I was so irritated by it, but it's popular and everybody cares about it, so let me try and care about it in my own way. And I think it came out okay, but it could be a self-defeating proposition.
You say to me, I want to make the best possible, most comprehensive possible version of a Signalis review, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's throw a wrench into that.
Let's do it.
What says that what you consider to be the most comprehensive reading and dissection of this product to be true? That because that's the problem that we run into when we start approaching because it's definitely there, even though we slag on people who yell at people for overthinking things. There is a lot of this game left up to interpretation. So what kind of approach will you take in trying to solidify what is left open-ended? What do you think you can do to make it, let's call it definitive?
Yeah, well, at first I was a lot more like kind of grinding it out, like it's really getting in there and being like, stop here, go here, this kind of thing. And then I realized, well, the whole point of the interpretation that I'm landing on is that it smooths out the rough edges the best, without dismissing, while dismissing the least amount of things. And the things it's dismissing are things that nobody can figure out, or if they think they figured out. It's just, this is an example of it, but it's like, what exactly is going on at the beginning of the game where the message gets sent out? Like, when spatially and temporally is that happening? Why, what planet is she landing on? Did she really crash on a planet? Is that affecting something in the future? And it might be intended to be that way, but like, it doesn't quite make sense because like the planet's characteristics don't line up with what you know about the planets and the lore and this and that. And it's just like, I don't think I can use that in any theory because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up right. So it's either got to be just an authorial stamp of it just is this thing, and it could even be contradictory to what we know. That's their interpretation. It was just like, just leave that alone. Let's figure out the smoothest. I think I call it like the Occam's razor idea. Try and do the thing that has the least amount of maintenance required to keep progressing.
Yeah.
Obviously knowing that, you don't want to exclude things just on the basis, well, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'd rather be wrong than be a hypocrite and go against it. Yeah. So that was I think the dream idea is the most defensible, but it's not like it's a hot take. Because it's not a dream that you wake up from and go, none of that was real.
No,
it's the fact that the dream is the way it's delivered to you, not the fact that it is a dream. It's just not the way events happened. We know they happen this way because we know that that's that's just the way life is. So because they're not putting it sequentially isn't important.
A better word for it is than dream, because dream is very broad. I would say astral recollection.
Yes.
Because it is a projection, but it's still a recollection.
Right.
If we're
astral
if
projection,
I'm going,
but just a different meaning of the two words.
Yeah. So,
that's exactly it.
But yeah, because it's warped. Because like we said, not everything can make sense. Because of the way things are and the time, the temporal space, everything around it is vague. It shouldn't work out the way it does. But yeah, a projection, a recounting of incidents. But that's what I'm saying. Like, is Elster real? That is the thing that has me like scratching my head the most. Is Elster real, or is Elster like an imaginary friend?
No, I think she's real. I mean, it's the point of the story. I think the best compromise is that we don't need to worry about whether this is literally happening someplace physically in the universe or whether this is a pocket universe. It's the point is that it's like, the reason I keep calling it a stage play is because it isn't intentionally. Like, it's like they're putting people up there to play their roles to show you how things have interacted, like why these matter to me, kind of thing.
Right.
Like, I feel like she's like, it's almost like watching someone play with their dolls or something.
Right.
Playing with their action figures. They're kind of like,
that's what it feels like. Yeah.
So it's, I mean, that's why, and people are like, well, how did we, the people in the Sierpinski, how do they sort of like feel autonomous, but also completely ripped out from the reality and stuck in there? And I was like, that's a good thing. That was always kind of like a problem with, I feel like, the dream theory is, or the recollection theory, I guess, where it's all subconsciously generated.
Right.
But then it's like, I don't know if there's really any solid way to kind of comb that over. And maybe it's just there to induce, to just show panic, just to play along with horror, tropes. Oh, this is awful. This feels bad. And to be honest with you, I feel like it's also probably there to mimic the idea that like Ariana is sort of like that vengeful spirit, kind of like Alessa in Silent Hill, or
it's
Alma in Fear, where it's like she's kind of
spiteful.
Yeah, she's sort of in her retaliation, inadvertently or otherwise, maybe even intentionally, replicating what's been done to her, what she feels has been done to her, and it's kind of, we're kind of seeing her suffering from another person's perspective as they're kind of ripped out of their reality and kind of crushed, packed down into hers. She sort of generates this weird dream reality. And I guess you could also say too that if the bioresonance sort of answers, because it does say it comes up with all sorts of crazy things. It like creates doppelgangers or something. There's even like remote viewing, one really obscure document that almost nobody ever references that I found. It makes things levitate. I mean, it warps reality. There's no, it does pretty much everything that you can imagine, or does enough things to be comprehensive. That's probably what's happening. That's probably why he feels so real. It's because he's basically that is reality. It's that to me is kind of where its Alan Wake influence comes in a little bit.
Yeah,
she is sort of
it's scratch.
It's her manuscript coming to life. The way she wrote it, but her manuscript is very like kind of like his in 2, where it's memory based, so it's kind of fractured and kind of like Solaris, where the people generate up from the planet. But it's like based on the perception of the people that the planet's mind is reading, of the mind that the planet is reading. So it's not the planet coming up with these things. It's just the catalyst for making the projection from that person's mind come to life.
Yeah, the gestalt.
It may not even be like the way the person is. It may just be the way that person viewed them. So that kind of thing. So it'll be a little imperfect, and then it'll be self-aware enough because she manipulates reality. So you become real, and then you get acted upon for real. So,
but
somewhat semantic, I think, in the end.
But in conclusion, I'd say it's I think its world is stronger than its story. Mostly because its story is intentionally disjointed.
Yeah. And I have an instinct it might even be, for all of the things that seem legitimately just inconsistent and impossible to rectify, it may just be really clever in that you've got a couple different really strong kind of strands of interpretation that sort of Venn diagram over each other, where they kind of overlap just enough, but they never quite finish themselves out. So it's like, that's pretty cool that you have like a pretty defensible line of, like, as long as you recognize enough of the supporting evidences of them, you can do a pretty good job of kind of going back and forth. Like, I don't think it's a dream at all. I think it's legitimately space. It's all happening in the present. And then you can go back and forth.
That's where my eventual conclusion landed is, and because I played it together with a friend, and we were talking about it for weeks on after it was done, even though we were initially quite pissed.
Right.
It's like it's very thought-provoking, but not in a it's not pretentious. At least it doesn't feel pretentious to me, because there has gone significant effort into anything that could be gotten from it and could eventually be discussed as well. I feel that it's while intentional, I do feel it is mostly unresolved. I dislike the pathway that the main story takes in the end, because it leaves too many questions. But as a whole, it is a very fun game with a very thought-provoking world. Mostly world, because, like I said, the main narrative presented is a bit floaty.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
I think that's where I kind of landed on this one too. It was one of those games that kind of got better the more I stopped trying to make it an end in of itself, where it was just like, this is a very fun game to me in a lot of ways, even though it has its obvious strength. It's almost like you kind of have to sit there and disengage yourself from playing it to kind of read back into it, and then you start to go, I can appreciate a lot of the things. Now, that's not that's not an incredibly high compliment.
No.
In a lot of ways, but I don't have to like it any more than they have to care that I like it. I can make a thing. I can at least respect it. Certainly a lot of parts. There's certainly respectable parts of it where it's not like I have to love it to appreciate it, I guess is a nice.
Yeah, it's where I stand as well.
Like a coworker you don't like, but you still respect him, and you're not going to sabotage him. You just kind of you're at a truce. You go, you know what? We recognize what we are.
Yeah, but ultimately, I'd say
whatever they are doing next, I wouldn't discourage following the same thought pattern. But for my personal, my the things that I enjoy personally, it is too vague in the end. I like a little more tangibility, and I myself am also very like hellbound on trying to explain everything as best as I can. And whereas in the narrative that I would create personally, I would leave things unresolved and interesting by making them complex rather than just leaving out the final page of the book, if that makes sense. Because I just feel a lot of it goes unresolved, and yeah, it does spark debates like we are having, where we have interpretation, we have philosophical interpretation, we have what is tangible, we have the characters, we have the world, but at the end of the day, a lot of the storylines that I got really into ended before it was satisfying to me.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that's a little bit unattractive about it's all about the love, man.
Yeah,
it's just like, yeah, but that's not really like a satisfying. I mean, that's a thing you can like about it. But I wouldn't get to the end of The Last of Us and go, because I like the ending, I thought it was a cool subversive ending, therefore the rest of the gameplay became automatically closed out well enough by the ending, because like I fucking hate playing The Last of Us in a lot of ways.
The gameplay in those games,
but I really respect that ending, which is in some ways kind of the opposite of Signalis. There's a lot of things in the gameplay I think are pretty decent, aside from the laborious balancing and backtracking and all that kind of crap. But yeah,
steering a little too close to the PS1 era.
Yeah. While also being, it was weird too. It's like, it'd probably help if I had experience with the old ones to know really for sure, as opposed to kind of watching footage and hearing people kind of comment that, well, the old Resident Evils let you expend your stuff real fast, so you're always kind of clearing out space. And it's like, that might be true, but that's something I probably also have to kind of like prove to myself.
No, it's something that I said about Yakuza 7. I think rings true in game design of projects like these. I say because I think Yakuza 7, they decided we're done doing beat 'em ups. We're making them like party based JRPGs, right? Mm-hmm. And they came up with the most basic cookie cutter streamlined JRPG party based combat that a man can imagine, and people defended it. They said, yeah, but it's the first time they're doing this. And then I bring down the hammer. I said, I am sorry to say it this way, but from a country that has invented the genre and has perfected and streamlined it over like 50 years, I expect a little bit more. And I would catch so much flack for that, because, and it's the first time they are doing this. It's made by Sega. It's not some indie game. It's the franchise that saved Sega, that is doing like Polish company's first mobile game combat. And tangent end. I think when you're making a retro game, which I know a few friends of mine who do that, from shooters to survival horror. Mm-hmm. Learn from what came before. Don't say, no, I'm gonna do it like this because this is the way they did it in 1998.
Don't be afraid to improve.
Yeah.
Because I got the impression from the way that Yuri Stern was talking that they sort of got the wrong lesson from the way the old inventories were. They thought that, well, survival horror is like it's like a false syllogism. It was like survival horror difficult, and should never make you feel comfortable. Therefore, anytime I mean, obviously overgeneralizing a little bit, but when I make something uncomfortable and unpleasant for you, I'm playing along with that holy paradigm or something like, therefore fall in line and suck it up. And it's like, yeah, but this just sucks. Same way not knowing where anything is in an old game sucks. Like, not everything is it's conceptually interesting just because it can kind of technically fall under the adjective. It's like survival horror combat. I fucking hate the idea that like it has to be laborious and miserable to pull off because it's hard to fight monsters.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And it's like, it's just like such a false. You're saying words like every meaning is like changing and conflating with something else every sentence. Yeah, it's just like political speak.
Yeah, and that's like if we're talking about survival horror combat, I think like the first Alan Wake plays really nice.
I still like playing that game. I mean, I understand that it doesn't always balance out. Like sometimes it kind of goes on for a little bit too long with the same type of encounter, which a lot of people complain about.
Fun.
It is fun.
It's fun and still scary, because you're, especially like in the back half of the game, you're constantly getting throttled and strangled by just the amount of shit around you, and the kind of stress, the kind of thought process that needs to go through your body to effectively deal with like an onslaught of immortal zombies until you shine a light on them is like a prioritization. Dodging projectiles, and it makes it tense. It makes it tense, but unless you're playing on Nightmare, that's a whole nother thing. The base difficulties do not breach or branch into tedium, and I think tedium is oftentimes misrecognized as difficulty.
Yeah, or it's I guess the reason it gets kind of shoved together a lot, and I probably do this too. It is a type of difficulty, and that is a difficulty to appreciate what you're doing. Or it's a negative emotion inducer type of thing. So that's probably where you can kind of massage a little bit. Because actually, what's funny too is I was actually playing. I never played Alan Wake on Nightmare as many times as I played it until just for the video I just made. And I was like, because I tried it once or twice. I was like, this is impossible. What the fuck? So I was like, there's no way I'm going to come back to this. Just ignore it. Because I don't really like playing things just on hard. The achievements don't mean anything to me. So I tried it this time around. And there was one time that a hedge maze, that kind of long hedge maze area where you're kind of locked in, that both gates are closed.
Yeah, behind the old people home.
Yeah. That's where like you and Barry are basically he's trying to get you out of there. I had so much trouble on normal, maybe like 10 tries the first time or two I played it. I was like, I'm never going to beat this on Nightmare. I think I got it the first try, and I was like, man, this is so weird. This happens all the time. I'll have so much trouble. Happened with Signalis too, the last boss fight. I'll have so much trouble, and then for some reason, I'll just get lucky one time. It'll be like, is this what happens to people who just never have like a negative problem with something, and I'll sit there and like have repeated negative experiences? It's like, is this what it comes down to? It's just like luck of the draw.
Yeah.
Or something.
But yeah,
it's a good lesson, I guess.
Narratively, Signalis does not learn from their inspirations and leaves too many things unresolved for my liking. But praise-wise, gameplay is fucking solid. Really, really good. Just movement combat, stellar. Love it.
Yeah,
very, very good modernization of like Resident Evil controls. It's very, very good.
Yeah, I can appreciate how it doesn't play like Elisa does.
Lisa,
you ever seen that? It's that new. It's kind of a maybe even French made or something. I'll have to look it up. It's very much. It's like the old tank controls. It's not like Resident Evil 4 Dead Space tank controls. It's like the ancient ones where everything is super relative to the way the character's facing because it's fixed camera.
Oh, you mean like you have to stand still to shoot, kind of?
Not that. It's like
or fixed camera.
Yeah, like it's fixed camera, which actually that's the real problem on tank controls is when the camera's fixed and it always changes, relatively speaking, what direction you need to hit because it's always based on like where they're facing. So it's like their back and their front are not the back and the front directionally facing you kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's why it's so tense. But like keeping that 2D space as not really, actually the space is 3D technically. It's just our perception of it's like 2.5 or something.
Yeah,
that makes it a lot easier to process while still giving you some depth and making it feel really good in Signalis.
Yeah. So anything else?
We could probably go on forever. We probably should wrap the topic on this and then go play the final draft and do it in an Alan Wake 2 one.
I agree.
No shade to Signalis, but I'm much more interested. And we didn't even talk about what Alan Wake does in Signalis. We could play around with that forever. All the fun little details. But Alan Wake 2 is going to be definitely a destination podcast-wise we should go to.
Yeah.
I think that'll also be probably more enjoyable because we want to sit there and like gaslight ourselves into liking it when we don't like something. We're a little bit more interested, and I wish that it played out as opposed to the fuck is that?
I'm a big Remedy fanboy, sadly. So I will be biased, but yeah, I will be biased. But
okay, I'll be as severe as I need to be.
I really like what Signalis makes you do more than what it does.
Yeah, it's like I like the mode. The details are a little lacking sometimes, but I like kind of the category it's in and what it's doing.
Yeah. So keep it up. Keep it up. Well, I'm either way. I'm really interested to see what they do next. No clue, but I'll give it a look when it comes by.
Yeah, I would be interested to see if it's even the same genre that they do next.
I don't know. They're very we don't really get a read on them.
Watch them make it like a no combat puzzle game or something.
like a Talos Principle.
Yeah, or something. Just like some weird like it'd probably be 2.5D or something anyway. But no,
or like a fear shooter, like a classic monolith shooter.
God, don't get me hot under the collar this late in the podcast.
Well, let's call it here. If you're listening, thank you for listening to us ramble. I don't think I can glorify it.
GV-97 is much better speaking off the cuff. You can tell I have to script out a lot of my thoughts to not
Yeah. Well, thanks. It was really fun.
Yeah, man. I enjoyed it. Tell you what, if people want to pursue us any further in our various endeavors, where can they find you specifically?
Me?
Yeah. What platforms of choice would you direct them towards?
I'm on Twitter. I don't have a very
user.
Sorry, I'm an ex-user. I don't have many public. I'm not a very public person.
That's very
you can find me. You can find me on X at capital G to the capital V 97. So at G to the V 97. That's where you can find me. If you really want to see me. And where can we find you? Oh wait, if people are listening to this, they already know where you are.
Yeah, we'll tell them what they already know, and then we'll tell them what they might not know.
Yeah,
YouTube at High Functioning Medium, which you probably already know since this is probably where you're seeing this. It's also probably going to be, if that's cool with all parties involved, probably maybe even post it to my Patreon, or we can keep it separate, whatever we want to do. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But it exists. The Patreon exists, regardless of whether this is there. At Patreon/.
Go support him.
Yeah. Apparently, I just got sent a video that Ko-Fi beats Patreon, so you might see me on Ko-Fi pretty soon too. I'm also on Twitter at High Funk Medium, funk with a C. Where else? We also are in Discord. I can send you that invite. It's also on the About section on my YouTube. And basically what I talk about there is just stuff like this. A lot of survival horror, horror in general, RPGs, shooters, action adventure. If it's cool, I've probably been there.
Oh. Depends on your definition of cool.
Well, I have the coolest definition, so I'm sure it's the best one.
That's true. Well, thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. GV-97. Until next, we loop back around or spiral.
Thank you, Mr. High Functioning Medium, for having me as a guest and a host.
Go guest host. We wear many hats here. Just hand them back and forth. Fit. I know, right? It's surreal, actually.
I'm gonna cut it now.
Magical.
I'm gonna stop recording now.
Cut the feed. Cut the feed. I can still hear you.
Yeah.
How dare you lie to the people like that?
Come on.